everyone. Before we learn more about how to write the Yale essays, we wanted to let you know that with your free CollegeVine account, you can get fast feedback on your college essay with our peer essay review. You'll receive detailed inline edits and actionable steps to improve your essay. If you want to become a better writer, you can also review another student's essay. Visit the link in the description below to sign up and review or submit an essay today.
To give it just a nice overview, again, they are really short. They're only about as long as a tweet to give you sort of a mental picture of what these essays actually look like. And so the goal here is to just make it a quick bite of information that is really about you, and it gives a sense of your personality. So you want it to be nice and specific. You want to avoid cliche here, as you'll hear me say plenty of times throughout this presentation. And it can be very difficult to have so little space, but what you're trying for is sort of balancing intellectualism and being serious with being lighthearted and not taking yourself too seriously. And that could be sort of a tough needle to thread, but we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Something about these essays that is a little different from what you might be used to is that because they're so short, you don't necessarily have to write in full sentences, though there are some that lend themselves more to full sentences than others, where some of them might be really nice as lists or fragments. So that's really up to you and your personal style here. But looking at what those questions actually ask, the first one is, what inspires you? And that is obviously a really broad question to be asking for you to answer in a really short period of time or a really short space. So you just want to make sure you're keeping it specific as you can. You want to ask yourself some questions to help narrow it down. You know, what does drive me? What makes me do what I do? Are there things that I really value that are making me strive for whatever my goals are? Or if there are lots of things that you are involved with and that are sort of all over the place, what connects them? What makes them similar? And that sort of will pull at some of these other questions about values, etc. So for example, obviously these aren't fleshed out full essays here, but they're ideas to work off of. Let's say you're somebody who is on your student council at your school. You work with your Model United Nations Club or your Youth in Government Club. Maybe you even intern at the mayor's office or with your congressperson. So obviously you're somebody who is inspired by working with government to make change alongside the constituents that you are trying to help. So you might have that as your core that inspires you here. But you might have things that aren't so thematically connected. You might have some things that are like computer science and the arts and theater, for example. And something that brings those things together is that you have a lot of creative freedom. You can always find a new way to code something more elegantly or more powerfully, in the same way that you can always improve your performance with feedback and with sort of new interpretations of the same script. And so maybe you're just always striving to improve what you've already built and what you already have and what you've already made. And that can be sort of something that connects your two passions there. It can be something that shows what you value, and that's self-improvement. Things that you really want to avoid in this kind of question are cliche. Like I said on the last slide, you know, world peace may be a very inspirational thing, very lofty goal, but it isn't necessarily believable or actionable, and something that is difficult to apply directly to you. So that's my general example. You'll see it come up a couple times, but that's what you're going for. You're driving towards specificity and something that connects the values that you have to what you actually do. The next question reads, what person, past or present, would you invite to speak? And what question would you ask? And so this isn't actually the full text of the question. It is the meat and potatoes of the question. But the beginning of this is a reference to Yale's college teas. And that's a tradition that's long-standing at Yale. And what it is that your residential college, the building in which you live, the community of which you're a part, randomly assigned at the beginning of your Yale experience, has an event every so often called a college tea, where they'll invite speakers in various fields to come give pretty intimate talks to your college. And that'll happen in sort of a living room style space. So there'll be a bunch of chairs set out and couches and snacks. And this person will be sitting maybe 6 feet away from you and giving a talk without slides, without images and visual aids. It's just them describing their journey, their career, the choices they made, and the experiences that they've had. So those are people from journalism, from politics, from the arts, from sciences. My favorite one that I went to was with Madeleine Albright, who used to be the Secretary of State. She's a really dynamic speaker and person. And it was really interesting to be very close to her and be able to directly ask her questions. And so what this question is asking you is, who would you want to invite to an event like that? And what would you want to know from them? And so that's obviously 2 questions that are wrapped up in one. And you can think about it from either end. If you're stuck, you can say, okay, who's somebody I really want to meet? Or you can say, what is something I really want to find out more about? And then from there, figure out who you should invite to get that kind of insight that you're looking for. So you want to ask yourself, what do you want to learn more about? How do you want to hear about it? What are the perspectives you're looking for? For example, if you are really interested in climate change, but you've heard a lot of scientists talk about it, maybe you want a science writer or a politician from the EPA. Maybe you want somebody who's from a region that is strongly affected by climate change right now in ways that are invisible to many of us living in the Northeast, where Yale is located. So it's all about what is going to be interesting to you. And so some good examples here are people like Brandon Stanton, who created Humans of New York, or Pierre de Fermat, who is a mathematician. And these people are good options because they are neither too famous nor too obscure. So they're not so famous that they are people who become generic that anybody could want to talk to, like Mother Teresa or Oprah Winfrey. But they're also not people who you need a lot of explanation for. You can give a quick explanation, like creators of Humans of New York, and you'll already know what this person's work is. You don't have to spend all of your 200 characters explaining them. And so questions that you want to avoid are really generic ones. Again, you want to err on the side of specificity. So you don't want to ask things like, how did you get where you are? Or if you weren't X, what would you be? What you want to ask is something that shows what you're interested in learning about. So for example, if you were bringing Brandon Stanton in, you might ask him, what's the most interesting story you've heard recently? Or what is the most important thing to ask somebody to understand who they are? Which is kind of a meta question for this kind of essay. So that's what you're looking for here. And this is one of the short answer questions that I recommend you answer in full sentences to avoid confusion. Fragments are going to be a little scattered when it comes to answering a more complex question like this. That leads us to this next question, this next short answer here. You are teaching a Yale course. What is it called? This is just a fancy way of asking you, what do you want to learn about? What are you interested in? And so you want to give kind of a unique course name here. And so you don't want to just be going with something like Econ 101 or microeconomics. That's one of the biggest classes every single year at Yale. So you want to be giving something that's more indicative of what you might bring, what kind of intellectual aspirations you might have. So a good way to think about this is, do you have 2 interests that you think you can really bring together in ways that haven't been done before? Or is there a field that's, very common, but you want to apply a new perspective to it. And then something beyond that, because a course title probably won't just take up your entire spot here, entire space. Talk a little bit about what you would teach here. What is the format? What are the assignments? What is making this class stand out? So some examples here might be designing and testing role-playing games. Maybe you are really interested in these kinds of role-playing games and computer science behind them, but also the experience of them and being a consumer. So you have your students design a game, you code the game, but you also maybe make them write short stories so that they can get a really good feel for setting, and so you can see where their minds are when it comes to the plot line of a game like this. And then maybe your final exam is that everyone has to play everyone else's games, something fun, different that engages the things that you're interested in. Similarly, you might be interested in the politics of cartoon shows. So they're, a really ripe political format, but one that isn't really explored academically. And you want to dive into that through sort of a lens that is new. So there are lots of options here. You just want to make sure that you are doing something, again, specific and unique, and you don't want to just give the course name and move right along to the next question. You want to flesh it out a little bit. What does the class look like? What are you learning about? How are you approaching this subject in unique ways? And that does bring us to the last short answer question, which is, again, focused a little bit on some Yale context. It starts off, most first-year Yale students live in suites of 4 to 6 people. What would you contribute to the dynamic of your suite? And so this takes another bit of Yale life, the way that you live, which is, not necessarily common or the standard. It's not just a hallway where you have your room or that you share maybe with one person and then a common bathroom for the whole floor. It's a suite that you share with 4 to 6 people. Maybe you have a single, maybe you have a double, but you also have a common room for the 4 to 6 of you and a shared bathroom. And so they want to know, what is this dynamic going to be like? What will you bring to this family unit that is going to characterize your living situation? And so you want to use this as an opportunity to just show what makes you special or interesting. And you can feel free to be really creative with this. You can give physical things, you can give intangible things. This is a great one to make a list for. So some examples here could be popcorn and yoga mats and things, but you do want to try to tie at least some of your physical things to intangibles. So popcorn for group movie nights and horror, or maybe horror movies, even more specific. So it gives a sense of what you like. And maybe you want to say you want to lead yoga sessions to help people de-stress before finals period. Something that is less physical, but something that really gets at what you value. And I said you can also use double entendre here. For example, you might bring warmth to your suite, both in the form of your signature hand-sewn quilts and your welcoming personality. This shows a bunch about you. It shows that you have this fun hobby of making these quilts. It shows that you're a welcoming, warm person. And it shows that you're clever and you can tie those things together. A couple things to avoid in a question like this. I'm talking just about money and being negative, especially on the money thing. You can feel free to bring a sense of adventure and cultural interest, but you want to say something other than, I will fund our spring break trip to Europe or whatever. You want to give something that's a little more indicative of personality and dynamic than what you can contribute financially. And on the note of negativity, like I said before, this is your family unit. These are the people you will see most often and will probably form at least some element of your core friend group. So you want to make sure that you're coming at this with a positive, optimistic outlook, something that you are excited about, because this is something that Yale is very excited about.